Caleb, Jaden, and then Drake May. Then he's got the receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. going. Then the big trade. Minnesota coming up to the Chargers spot at 5 to take J.J. McCarthy. You see the rest of the top 10. Mel, I will address Brock Bowers to the Jets at 10 with you a little bit later, perhaps off the air. That's of extraordinary concern, maybe only to me. I need you to call Joe Douglas and tell him that's a terrible idea. But let's get to the part of this that everyone else is excited about. A terrible idea. Field Yates as well. Sorry, not to mention Yates with us up as well. Okay, but let's start with McCarthy. Mel, I mean, it's funny because J.J. McCarthy and Michigan win the national championship. And we're sitting there, I feel like the conversation that night was, boy, he might sneak into the first round. Mm-hmm. And here we are 15 days from the draft, and in your mock draft, he has snuck all the way up to number 5. Talk to me about J.J. McCarthy.
A lot to unpack there, and Field and I had debated that on the podcast back and forth. What will the Vikings do? Will they sit at 11 and wait it out? Because Denver picks at 12, but Denver has no second-round pick to maybe jump ahead and move up. So if you think about Minnesota, they're in a division right now with Jared Goff, Jordan Love, and also now Caleb Williams. So you move up and get J.J. McCarthy. You give up picks. Now there's the Chargers at 5 want to lose out on Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze, who Justin Herbert would really like to have, right? And then you think about where they could go. Well, they could go down to 11 and get maybe a J.C. Latham, right tackle from Alabama, who they need. And they could get, because of the depth at wide receiver, an Xavier Worthy at 23. Are they okay with that? Or they want the stud receiver at 5. So I think when you look at this pick, is it too high for McCarthy? Field and I have talked about that on the first draft podcast. I have him at 14. I did that to close the gap between McCarthy and Drake May. He was around 21. 14 is not high enough to go up and get him at 5. That's my opinion, but the opinion around the league is, hey, maybe they will. Maybe they could go up and get him to secure that quarterback. Overdrafting for quarterbacks is here to stay, guys. It's been here a long time, and it's not going away.
Yates, is J.J. McCarthy worthy of being a top 5 pick in the draft?
Yeah, like Mel, he is lower in my rankings than number 5 overall, Greeny, but the reality of the NFL draft is this. This is an element of projection. This is what we are doing. We are taking these players with various level of sample sizes at the college level and saying, can they become successful pro picks? And that might be the biggest thing working against J.J. McCarthy and feeling more confident in your evaluation. Just consider this. J.J. McCarthy was a full-time starter for 2+ seasons. Michael Penix Jr. has been in college for 6 years, just as an example. Bo Nix has more starts than any other quarterback in FBS history. Part of the reason why we are still kind of figuring out J.J. McCarthy is he threw the football 332 times this past year. That being said, when you take a look at what he did within those 332 throws and those clutch moments for a team that was the best team in college football and one of the best teams we've seen in college football during the playoff era, you see precision, you see ball placement, you see clutch production on third down. It wasn't that Michigan needed to lean on J.J. McCarthy as much as other teams did their quarterbacks, but when they did, J.J. McCarthy met the moment every single time last year, a big part of the reason why they went 15-0.
Lewis has tape, so show me J.J. McCarthy plays.
Yeah, look, there is, quite honestly, objective data that when you look at the tape, or if you want to call it subjective data, that shows you that in big moments, this guy can make big-time throws. And he can make them from the pocket or outside the pocket. Look, that ball placement there is exquisite. I want you to watch this rolling to his left, where he puts this football. Look at this throw. Look, I'll tell you, look, now, if Caleb Williams is making that throw, or if Jaden Daniels is making that throw, we're sitting there going, oh, my God, he looks just like Patrick Mahomes. Look at the box that he fits this window into. And this is just a few plays. Okay, now, if you want to look at the objective data, if you want to say, look, this is a guy who in FBS last year was 3rd in total QBR. QBR outside the pocket, he was 3rd. QBR on 3rd down 7+, he was number 1. Okay, if you want to try and objectify this, I mean, look, it's right there. It's right there for you to look at. Now, I understand the sample size for some people may not be extensive enough for you to be comfortable saying he's a top 5 pick. But that's what the NFL is all about. One, it's about future performance projection, and you're trying to minimize risk while you're doing it. Now, people will say, well, the risk is pretty high because, you know what, his resume isn't that long. Well, that's the business that we live in here when you're talking about the NFL. And when you're talking about quarterbacks in particular, it gets amplified because you know that supply it doesn't exceed demand. There's always more demand than supply. So look, for J.J. McCarthy, it's not a matter of whether or not he's worth a top 5 pick. It's whether or not someone can justify picking him there, and teams are going to justify it this year.
I was just about to say, and teams will gladly try to justify yes, within the first 5 picks, he has to be off the board. Because when I ask teams about J.J. McCarthy, the thing that I keep hearing, winning pedigree. That is it. It doesn't matter. To Fields' point about he wasn't asked to do a whole lot of times. They've seen enough. They've seen him in those big pressure moments. They've seen him win to me, when I hear guys talk about this kid, it's about the projection, what he can be in the NFL, and they're very high.
Based on what you're hearing, and you will be with the Commanders on draft night, I believe. Do you believe we will see 4 quarterbacks off the board in the first 5 picks?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
That's the way it's headed, right? I mean, exactly how Mel has it drawn up. Now, is there a chance that 2 of them wind up swapping places from where they are? We're going to get into that. Fill in the blank. Lewis, I'll start with you. Fill in the blank for us. Marvin Harrison Jr. compares to whom?
A faster Devontae Adams. And look, Devontae Adams, quite honestly, is a standard in the NFL because as an X or a Z, a guy who is on the outside lane can just win one-on-one when you know they're going to throw it to him. That is what Devontae Adams is. That's what Marvin Harrison Jr. is. When you're talking about the guy who is just the true alpha, the guy who can go get the ball in the deep part of the field and just flip the whole complexion of the football game, that is what Marvin Harrison Jr. does. That's why he's going to be the first wide receiver off the board in my estimation, and why Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in football.
Lewis, I'll come back to you. Mel has Brock Bowers going 10 to the Jets. Who does he compare to?
He compares to George Kittle. And why I say that is this: Brock Bowers can block in line, he can block on the move, he can line up in the backfield, he can run the football if you need him to, and then it's the run after the catch competitiveness. And it's not just the competitiveness. The guy has functional strength, he has functional speed, he's got very good hands down the field. He really is the all-around, Pro Bowl caliber tight end. And look, if George Kittle just stays on the football field and stays healthy all the time, and he was actually featured as the #1 receiving threat, he'd be amongst the very best in the NFL from a statistical standpoint. That being said, that is Brock Bowers' best comparison right there.
I like it. Then Yates, you finish this one off for me. How about Malik Neighbors from LSU? Who does he compare to?
Yeah, Greeny, I almost went with the light version of Tyreek Hill with the explosiveness. I'll go with Stephon Diggs instead. Certainly a player who's shown plenty of explosiveness in his day as well. When we talk all the time about the vertical presence of Malik Neighbors, which is absolutely outstanding, he was a zone killer as well. Some of the stuff that he shows in terms of his instincts, understanding of finding space, and then once he creates that space, doing absolute damage after the catch, reminded me very much of the new Houston Texans wide receiver and one of the very best players in the NFL in Stephon Diggs.
All right, so on Mel's mock draft, and seemingly all of them that I've seen lately, he has Malik Neighbors going to the Giants at 6. Earlier this week, Neighbors, we showed you this, was asked about potentially becoming a Giant. Here was what he said.
Going to New York, it wouldn't be a bad idea, but quarterback situation, I know, they're going to figure it out, especially, if they got a caliber receiver coming like me, they're going to want to give me the ball, so I'm sure they're going to want to have a quarterback that can do that.
Okay, so not exactly. Boy, I can't wait to team up with Daniel Jones and see what we can get done there, which begs 2 questions. And Mel, I'll save you for a moment here because you have the Giants doing something a little different. But Kmart, I think a lot of people wonder, will the Giants move up from 6? Mel has Minnesota jumping them to get to 5 to take J.J. McCarthy. A lot of people speculating maybe the Giants make the aggressive move up.
I've heard that the Giants understand the situation they're in. They realize that they need to be sure at quarterback, and right now they are not sure. They don't have a clear plan there with Daniel Jones. So yes, the problem for the Giants is, like you mentioned, the Vikings. There are other teams that want to try to move above them, and the Vikings seem to have more capital to do that. I've heard the Giants are a team, mentioned J.J. McCarthy a lot. I've heard the Giants being interested in J.J. McCarthy. It'll be interesting to see where he goes and if the Vikings are able to get up there and get him before the Giants do.
So, Mel, taking all this into account, you have the Giants making, in your mock draft, a very interesting move here. Tell everyone what you see them doing.
Yeah, get Malik Neighbors for Daniel Jones to try to help him and develop and build on what he did 2 years ago when he won a playoff game against Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. It looked like he was moving forward to be an elite quarterback. Well, injuries, obviously, came around him, problems there. So you get the insurance. So Brian Daboll says, okay, I get the receiver to help Daniel, but I also get some insurance moving up to get Bo Nix. Bo Nix is 24. Bo Nix has a gazillion starts. J.J. McCarthy's just 21 years of age. Now you get a guy more NFL ready. You get a guy that, hey, if Daniel Jones gets injured or he doesn't take that next step, Then you have Bo Nix waiting there to reset things and become that guy. Well, the neighbor said quarterback-wise, they said they're going to address it at some point. May not at 6. Maybe a wide receiver there, but then you go back up and get the quarterback. Will Levis, Tennessee moved up and got him last year, early in the second round. Similar situation here with the Giants moving up to get Bo Nix.
A lot of people like
Mel didn't consult Malik Neighbors before making that mock draft.
We'll see what Malik thinks about the idea of playing with Bo Nix. You like him?
Yeah, I do like Bo Nix. I like him a lot. And quite honestly, I think when you went down to the Senior Bowl and you looked at him in a pro-style offense when he got underneath center and how he was able to pick up the footwork, how he was able to pick up the timing, and how he progressed throughout practices while he was down there, this is a guy who, again, future performance projection tells you that he will pick up. If, in fact, he was to go to a team like the Giants, he will pick up the kind of offense that Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll want to run. Again, this is a guy who gets the ball out of his hands very quickly. He takes care of the football. He was the best quarterback in college football in terms of not taking sacks, not turning over the football with interceptions, not fumbling the football. These are all things that coaches now, look, we as fans may not value those things right now at this time of year. All we want to hear about is what kind of arm strength does he have? How far can he throw it? Can he make the good old Zach Wilson throw rolling to his left? No, coaches value, and I know that.
Well, I was going to say, why did you take a shot at Greeny like that?
I did.
I don't know why I caught a stray in the middle of this conversation.
but you know what? Yeah, people, I like Bo Nix, and I like this trade idea that Mel is putting out here. I really do.
Yates. Mel is living in a world where he has 4 quarterbacks going in round 1. I look at literally every mock draft that comes out in our preparation. I've seen many that have 5. I've seen many that have 6. How many do you believe that Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr., as Mel does, will be there when we start night 2 on Friday?
I keep thinking, Greeny, that we're going to have 5 quarterbacks in the first round, but it's tough to place specifically where that 5th quarterback goes. Certainly the points that we are looking at as kind of the potential possibilities are if the Vikings move up, as Mel has laid out in this scenario. The Broncos have picked number 12. The Raiders have picked number 13. Those are the 2 most obvious spots where teams who are still in that quarterback market who may not believe those players will be available once they roll around to their second-round picks, or in the case of the Denver Broncos, they don't have a second-round pick. So the possibility of a trade-up like Mel showed right here for the New York Giants should not be ruled out in the second round. And Lewis was talking about the future performance projection on Bo Nix, and obviously it's impossible for us to know exactly how these players are going to become as NFL signal callers just next year or future years as well. But when you have as much tape on film as Bo Nix does, I mean, the most experienced quarterback in the history of the FBS, I do think teams have a bit more of an assurance with him because you kind of know the limitations for Bo. And